Welcome to The Explainer. We're diving into a deeply documented and frankly pretty intense story today. It's about the battle to be understood and what happens where the very way you communicate puts you at odds with the systems you're supposed to trust for justice.
Wow. Okay, so this line, it's from a raw recorded argument right at the heart of a custody fight. You can just feel the desperation in it, can't you? It's the sound of someone feeling completely powerless, pleading to be heard, to be treated like a human being.
And that really brings us to the core question we're going to unpack here. What happens when the way you speak, the way you write, the very way you try to explain yourself becomes the biggest weapon used against you? We're going to piece this together using a mountain of emails, texts, and legal documents.
Okay, so to really get what's going on, we have to start with the main person in the story, Luke, and how he communicates. Because, as you'll see, it's different, especially when things get emotional.
So, here's Luke, in his own words, trying to explain his brain to his lawyer. He's been recently diagnosed with autism and ADHD, and he's basically saying, listen, the way I operate is by being exhaustive, by being incredibly detailed. He's not trying to be difficult, he's doing everything he can to prevent any possible misunderstanding.
And check this out. This is what's so striking. He's completely self-aware about it. He knows his long emails are a lot to handle. He's not just stating a problem, he's actually offering a solution, even suggesting he could use AI to make it all more digestible. He's trying to meet people more than halfway.
This right here, this is the core of the whole challenge. When the stakes are highest, like, say, custody of your child, his instinct isn't to be brief, it's to give more information, more context, to make absolutely sure there is zero room for error. For him, more data equals more clarity.
So, you've got this communication style that's rooted in a deep need for absolute clarity. What happens when that style smacks head-on into the legal system, a world that values being brief and to the point above almost everything else?
Well, it was a total collision. You can see the disconnect right here. On Luke's side, he's thinking, I'm giving my lawyers every single detail they need to win this case. But on their side, all they see are excessive emails that are causing stress. What he saw as being transparent and helpful, they saw as a breakdown. Two completely different worlds.
And you can just feel the frustration boiling over in this email. He's basically shouting, I told you this is how I communicate. I was upfront about my disability from day one. But instead of getting support or finding a different way to work together, he just gets threatened. He's being penalized for being exactly who he said he was.
And this wasn't just a one-time issue. It was a pattern. You can see it clearly here. He splits with his first lawyer. In October, he hires a new firm. By December, just 2 months later, they're out too. Same exact reason, a breakdown in the relationship. He's just left stranded, forced to figure out this incredibly complex system all by himself.
And that breakdown wasn't just an emotional nightmare. It had a very real, very high price tag, over $7,800. That's the bill for just 2 months of friction and miscommunication that ended with him being dropped as a client. A tangible, painful cost.
So here's where things take a really dark turn, because his communication style didn't just annoy his lawyers. It was actively used to build a legal narrative that he was mentally unstable. But what does the actual documented evidence show? This was the story told in court. He was painted as unstable, manic, someone unpredictable, and maybe even incapable. And this entire narrative was built almost exclusively on the sheer volume and the raw emotional honesty of his own written words.
And his own lawyer lays out the legal trap he was in. All the other side had to do was point to his autism and ADHD diagnosis, and just like that, boom, the tables are flipped. It was no longer on them to prove he was unstable, it was suddenly on him to prove he was a capable parent despite his diagnosis. Think about that. He was essentially presumed incapable until proven capable. But then you look at the actual medical records, the cold, hard data, and the story changes completely. Sure, he had mild depression. I mean, who wouldn't be depressed going through this? But the AIMS score, which is used to look for signs of side effects from drugs used for mania, was 0. Zilch, and drug tests were negative. The facts on paper just did not support the story being told in court.
So this created this absolutely impossible situation, a real catch-22. He had to argue two seemingly opposite things at the same time. On one hand, my neurodivergence is disabling enough that I can't hold a traditional job. And on the other hand, but that same disability doesn't in any way prevent me from being a fantastic parent. Our legal system just isn't designed to handle that kind of nuance.
So, what was the end result? After this monumental effort to document every single detail of his reality, to make himself understood in a system that just wasn't built to listen to him, what happened? You can just hear the absolute despair in his words. He produced a literal mountain of documents, and yet he felt more voiceless than ever before. What's really heartbreaking is that last part. He's so beaten down that he's looking at his own true story and seeing how an outsider might just dismiss it.
And here it is, the ultimate, crushing irony. The very binder of messages he put together to prove his case, to give context, to be totally transparent, that binder was turned against him. It became the primary piece of evidence used to argue he was unstable simply because of its size and its emotional honesty. His effort to be understood is precisely what undid him. In his own words, he was fucked for trying.
It leaves us with this really difficult question. When one person's sincere, detailed attempt to create an archive of the truth is just seen by another person as chaotic noise, how do we decide what's real? It forces you to ask, who are our systems actually built to listen to, and what gets lost? Or who gets lost in the translation?